Right. Let's bring in Arizona Senator Jeff Flake. And Jeff also sits on the two committees that seem to matter the most right now regarding Jeff Sessions and also Rex Tillerson. David Ignatius is in Washington. Jeff, and we'll start with the first question. Mr. Ignatius.
I want to ask whether you have personally been concerned by any of what you've read or heard about the president-elect and Russia and his positions on Russia. And what are the questions you're going to want to push with Rex Tillerson to make sure that U.S.-Russia policy stays on a steady, appropriate course?
Well, I think anyone would be concerned if the documents turn out to be verified, but they are unverified, and in fact seem to contain some falsehoods that have been pointed out already. Obviously, in the hearing, these questions are going to come up. I suppose by the time it gets to me on the dais, they will have been asked many times, but if there are other things to explore about the Russia relationship, I'll certainly bring it up. But I've met with Mr. Tillerson. I've been impressed with the answers that he's given me, and I assume he'll give the same answers to the committee, that he'll put his past aside in terms of arguing for shareholders and for the best interests of the company, and put his experience and knowledge to good use for the country.
Senator Flake, it's Willie Geist. In your meeting with Rex Tillerson, did you feel he had a grasp of the world beyond Russia? We all understand his business relationships and ties to Russia, but places like North Korea, places like Syria and the Middle East, and perhaps what direction he and Donald Trump may take our country with regard to those places?
Well, it would be, I think, unexpected for somebody to have a grasp of every conflict or every region and what's going on, but he's a very smart man. He's done business in a lot of countries and has an inquisitive mind. I was impressed by that. I'm particularly concerned about Africa. I chair the Africa subcommittee, and so I ask several questions about what the U.S. is doing there and where he thinks we're being effective with our soft diplomacy and where we could be more effective. And I was impressed with his answers. So he's a knowledgeable man, and I think he's inquisitive, and that will certainly help.
Dr. Evelyn Farkas, you have a question?
Yeah, Senator Flake, I know I don't want you to give away anything classified, obviously, but just looking at the report, based on what I know, some of the information in there does ring plausible. Do you and the fact that the intelligence community would bring this to the president-elect does seem to indicate that some of it may in fact be plausible, may in fact be verifiable. What do you say to that?
Well, I think that Donald Trump will address that at 11 o'clock at his press conference. I'm sure that he'll be asked. And, just because it seems plausible doesn't mean that we ought to run with it. So I think that he'll be asked that and probably will answer it.
Yeah, Senator Flake, this is Steve Kornacki. I'm curious, too, just in terms of the Republicans and how they approach these hearings, specifically the Rex Tillerson hearing, is there an opportunity here for some Republicans who maybe, just in terms of the philosophy of the U.S. relationship with Russia, the U.S. relationship with Putin, Donald Trump has talked about putting that relationship on a different track that I know makes a lot of Republicans uncomfortable. Is the Tillerson hearing an opportunity for Republicans to use these hearings to deliver a message to Donald Trump about where they would like to see him go when it comes to Russia and Putin?
Yeah, I certainly expect that to happen. Marco Rubio is on the committee. He has very strong thoughts about our Russia relationship. I'm sure that you'll hear that from him. Rand Paul has been outspoken about our role in the world. He's on the committee. We'll hear that. And like I said, for those who chair committees, regional committees, like myself with Africa, there'll be questions about our U.S. policy toward those regions. And it isn't always questions, as you mentioned. It certainly, here's the way we feel. I have certain opinions with regard to Cuba. I think the opening there has been good. I've asked Mr. Tillerson about that in private. I'll probably have some questions in public as well.
Eugene.
Senator Flake, Gene Robinson. As chairman of Exxon, Mr. Tillerson has had to make a lot of deals with a lot of devils, a lot of deals with autocrats. You're interested in Africa, the family that runs Equatorial Guinea, for example. Places where there are oil, he's dealt with them. Did you get a sense that he is sort of shifting his approach to one that would be more appropriate, frankly, for a Secretary of State. We don't always deal with dictators in the way that an oil company executive might. Our interest is not just to protect the interests of the shareholders. It's it's the government of the United States.
Very much so. He said as much directly that in the past he has represented the shareholders of Exxon, and in the future he'll represent the State Department, the President, and the American people. So I do think that it's certainly a different role. But having said that, ExxonMobil had various programs of corporate responsibility in Africa, some of which I think have been effective with regard to malaria. And I think that he brings some experience that'll be useful for the State Department there.
All right, Senator Jeff Flake, thank you so much for being on the show this morning.